Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode, to another edition of the Ojiako podcast. I hope you're all well. Please forgive me if I do sound a bit tired and groggy whilst making this podcast. Just so it's about 4 a.m. here, about 10 to 4 in the morning a.m. here in the UK. So I kind of left this late, but I wanted to get this podcast out as soon as possible. Because my channel, my platforms have all been a bit dormant for a long while, and I want to grow my podcast obviously as quickly as possible. It is late here, but please do forgive me if I do come across a bit tired or a bit groggy. So I'll get straight into it. UFC Vegas 21, and the main card was pretty stacked, but the first and the first fight and the last one on the main card was a bit of a controversy. Both turned out to be ended up being no contests, and basically both fights turned out to be a draw. And to be honest, most of the fights didn't go the way I had predicted. So it goes to show that I still have a lot to learn about mixed martial arts. God, I hope this thing isn't too loud. I'll leave it too close to my mouth when I'm speaking to the microphone. But anyway, straight into it. The first fight, Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards, the welter weight division for the men. Gotta stop saying So I thought really initially that Belal would actually win this fight, but even leading up to that horrible second eye poke, Leon Edwards was actually like the commentators were saying, he was actually gradually picking Belal apart, and he is actually doing a lot better than what I thought, because I thought that Belal would actually go in there and be quite dominating the fight, and would actually be cornering his opponent like I saw him do in his last few fights. Corner his opponent, put pressure on them, as other commentators, other podcasters have been saying. But I understand what they're saying when I've seen him fight before in the past. And just watching it, you can see he doesn't move, just stays there and starts attacking his opponent, gradually taking them to pieces, and just gradually attacking them, cornering them. He's not moving, not being evasive at all in the octagon. But in this case, that didn't happen. Leon Edwards made him move around, made him follow him, and it made him track him in the octagon there. And it wasn't like a standstill fight. He actually had to track his opponent, and unfortunately, I think the first round, Edwards did mistakenly poke Belal in the eye. He did mistakenly poke Belal Muhammad in the eye. And they had to pause the fight, and then they resumed again. Then the second round, Edwards, it was a really, really nasty eye poke. I mean, the poor guy, Muhammad, actually stopped. He fell on the floor, and he did cry for a little bit. He was in agony, basically. He was just in terrible agony. It was horrible, and but thankfully he posted pictures on his Twitter feed that his eye is getting better. Of course, the wound is still fresh, and but no, his vision's gradually coming back. So thankfully, it's not a permanent injury. Many people in the community were reacting that they thought that the way he'd been reacting after being poked in the eye, they thought that perhaps his eyeball probably would have been hanging out, which is the reason why he was reacting and just crying. I'm not going to bash the guy for crying. First of all, he's willing to go into a fight to compete as a fighter, a mixed martial arts athlete, so I have a lot of respect for him for doing that. It's a sport that I like, of course. I'm not so sure that I would compete myself. So I'm not going to bash the guy for crying, because the eyes is almost the most sensitive, one of the most sensitive organs in the body. Your life would be very, very different, very, very different without having your vision, your perfect 20/20 vision. I do understand how and why he reacted the way he did. It's a horrible position to be in, but again, thankfully his vision is on. He's on the mend, and his eyes is getting better, and his vision is gradually coming back. But it's a really shitty situation to be in, and more to the point, on top of that, he also took this fight on at a short notice. So I posted about this fight in my Instagram feed, in my stories, and in my Instagram feed as a post. I said that I feel really bad for both these guys. Of course, more importantly for Belal Muhammad, but I feel bad for Leon Edwards because Leon Edwards hasn't fought since 2019. So of course, he does have my sympathy as well. And of course, in this game, you want to be fighting. Of course, taking your health into account, you want to get as many fights beneath the belts as much as possible. Of course, you want to have much more wins than you do of losses. But of course, if you're going to be if you're not going to be competing so often whilst you're still in your prime, then it feels like you're wasting your life, you're wasting your time, you're not earning any money, because in this sport, and I'm not bashing anyone in this sport, but from what I can see, especially in an organization like the UFC, okay, fine, and I could be contradicting myself here, but in MMA, from what I can see, nobody cares about you, so you really have to look after your own. You have to look after number one, look out for number one, and at some point, sometimes you probably find yourself even being very selfish. But from what I've seen, and this is just coming from a novice from the outside, you in this sport really you are on your own, both inside the octagon and outside the octagon, because these guys, even once they retire, they also have to deal with certain injuries that progressively, especially with their brains, progressively will get worse over time. Although there are treatments, but I mean, the injuries themselves, the sorts of damage it does to the body, your overall system will never be the same again. So for back to this fight, leading up to the serious eye poke in the second eye poke in the second round, and it did seem to be a pretty good fight, entertaining fight. Wasn't really going the way that I thought it would go. I thought Belal would have just cornered Leon and just taken him apart with strikes and leg kicks and or whatnot, and that wasn't the case. But nonetheless, it was a decent fight. And on top of that, I said that already, but also I will point out that Belal was happy to do a rematch, but it seems that Leon Edwards isn't really feeling the same way. I think what he wants after this now is a title fight, a UFC title fight. Yeah, but I'll get to that probably towards the end of the podcast. Moving on to the co-main event. Ryan Spann versus Misha Serkinov. So this fight was one of the fights I think my predictions actually was correct. Was it correct? Did he win? I don't bloody remember, but what I thought would have happened is that no, my prediction actually was incorrect. It was completely. Now I remember the fight vividly in my mind. It was incorrect because I remember Spann actually having Misha Serkinov on the ground beneath him, and Spann just finishing the fight with plenty of counter strikes and just finishing the fight as you would do, finishing the fight as someone like Aljamain Sterling would have liked to finish the fight against Petr Yan. So I thought initially that Serkinov would have gone in there and basically just in a short space of time gone a takedown in, and what would have won via submission. But the fight did start pretty well. Briefly there was a pause because Spann was struck in the groin mistakenly, and then not long after Serkinov was dropped by Spann for the first time. Spann did rush in for a takedown, but he did rush in to try and finish him off with strikes while Serkinov was on the ground. But the guy did manage to get back to his feet, Soon after, Spann did manage to land. I can't understand my handwriting it. He did manage to land a strike at Serkinov's temple, and that dropped him, and that actually allowed him to finish him off properly with some good counter strikes and striking while his opponent was on the floor. So I thought I actually had this in the bag in terms of predicting who would win, but nope. I still have a lot of shit to learn about this sport. So this was a quick one. Gavin Tucker versus Dan Ige of the men's featherweight division. Excuse me, guys. So Gavin Tucker, seeing his last several fights after he fought Rick Glenn, where that fight was it was horrible. But the following 3 fights after that, probably not including this one, but the following 3 fights after that, he had improved his fighting a lot, and that fight with Rick Glenn, I think, did teach him a lot about how to conserve your energy properly, how to use your power, especially when you're striking, your counter striking, or whatever attack you're going to use on your opponent, how to use your power efficiently and wisely as well. So, but back to this particular fight against Dan Ige. Dan Ige. It's one of those fights I say the fight was over before it even started. So less than 30 seconds into the first round, Ige just dropped Tucker with a single punch, a KO, and yeah, he won by KO. So there's not much else I can actually say. I mean, I thought that Tucker would have gone into that cage and use a takedown to win, and would have used a takedown or clinch, or not takedown, and would have won by submission. Because I can see in the fights after the Rick Glenn fight, one of the things I can see that Gavin Tucker is good at is his ground game is good. His grappling on the floor, keeping his opponent down on the canvas floor of the octagon. He's good at that. And in this case, I think Dan Ige got that really heavy punch in there quickly enough to just to own the whole fight, and he won. He won the fight. So again, this is something that either it's luck or just in this sport, it's just the better fighter wins. I do understand that in mixed martial arts, anything can happen. It's that sort of sport. So Davy Grant versus Jonathan Martinez, the men's bantamweight division. So Davy Grant did win this particular fight. Both fighters. It was an entertaining fight. Both fighters started the fight. It was more or less like at the beginning of the fight. It's like at the beginning of the fight, it's sort of both fighters they touch gloves, but they're kind of like, I don't want to be too wordy in my language here, but they are sort of pacing backwards and forwards at each other. So towards the end of the first round, Martinez did get a takedown in. Grant seems to be putting pressure on. In the second round, David Grant did put a lot of pressure on Martinez in round 2, and what else did I say about this fight? Yeah, Martinez did look like he was mainly defending himself against every attack from Grant. So yeah, and the winner was David Grant, which is what I said before. So I can't even make out my own handwriting as I'm reading this, which is not good. So I've got to write much more clearly next time, or as I look and sound stupid in this podcast. But yeah, David Grant did win this one. I think before in my last podcast, if anyone's watched or listened to it, I did looking at David Grant, looking at Jonathan Martinez, the last 2 fights who they fought. I was just thinking, both these guys are very good, so it'll be hard to predict who will win who will win this fight, who will walk away being the winner, because both of them are very good and they're almost evenly matched. So for me, it would have been hard to nail down, who the winner potentially would be. All right. So next up is Matthias Niklou versus Manor Cape, the men's flyweight division. So this fight started strongly. Both fighters were pacing backwards and forwards, exchanging some some missing strikes. Do I say I said it so strongly. But at some point, Nicola did rush him for a clinch and then turned it into a takedown. At this point, I could say that his ground game was good. He did manage to keep his opponent Carpe on the floor for a long time, and he did manage to actually control his opponent as well. Keeping the way that he can, if he wants to, but if he should, to win the fight, of course, he can get him to a rare naked choke hold. He can just hold and then start hitting their face with strikes, counter strikes. And up around 2, Carpe was really swinging and dishing out some really heavy strikes. I think it's one of those occasions whereby after the first round, if you're not performed so well and you're still well enough, if you've not been injured too badly, you're still well enough to go into the second round, but still perform, still continue. I think when the fighter sees it in the first round, they really didn't win. They know themselves they didn't win at all. Then they make up for it in the second rounds by just attacking their opponent probably much more ferociously, dishing out lots of strikes, counter striking, leg kicks, head kicks. So they try and make up for that. So that's basically what happened in round 2. And just to top it off, Nicolu won via split decision. I think this is one of those fights. Yeah. Carpe was actually so shocked that, hold on a second, how can this be the case? And I think I didn't really see it in the footage that I saw, but I think Nicole actually had to go over to Carpe and actually tap Carpe on the shoulder, tapped him a good 3, 4, 5, or 6 times just to get his attention. They could at least shake hands, just to show that mutual respect for one another as fighters is still there, regardless of the outcome of this competition. But I'm not sure if the guy actually shook his hand, because Carpe was just so shocked at the result. And sometimes when I'm watching the fight myself, I can understand why the other fighter would be actually just disgusted at the results. And even Dana White's come out saying that sometimes these judges who he has hired, I'm assuming that's how it works in the fighting organizations, they hire the judges work for them. Even he has said at certain post-press conferences after a fight, some of those judges actually just don't know what the fuck they're doing. And yeah, it's easy to see. It's clear to see. Last but not least was the other fight that had the controversial attack. So to start off with, the fight did start off well. Both guys were performing really well, entertaining to watch. And what really stopped the whole fight was an illegal knee from Anders, which basically it echoes what happened back at UFC 259, or say back at it echoes what happened at UFC 259 between PCR and Aljamain Sterling. So what happened was that Darren Stewart was, I think, at this particular point, Eryk Anders had Darren Stewart in a clinch, and Darren Stewart managed to get to his knees, and if you're on your knees in the fight, even if you have one knee on the ground, it means that as a fighter you are down. So you're not. It's assumed. No, well, if you're down, then it means that you're not actually participating in the sport, in the competition. Excuse me. It means you're not actually or actively participating in this fighting competition. So it was clear to see Darren Stewart did have his knee on the canvas floor, which meant he was down. Eryk Anders, while they didn't see this, or it was an accident, he kneed his opponent in the head. So the whole fight resulted in a no contest, unfortunately. That echoes what happened at the it kind of echoes the illegal knee that happened back at UFC 259 between Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. The only difference is that Aljamain Sterling was still given the win, but again, he was disappointed that he didn't win the way that he wanted to win. God, I hope this thing doesn't sound too loud in the mic. But in this case, it just resulted in a no contest. So So people in the mixed martial arts community have been reacting to that vicious eye poke that Belal Muhammad had to sustain at the main event between himself and Leon Edwards. So a lot of people have been sympathetic with Muhammad, and some even think that the eye poke should potentially warrant a disqualification from the sport. Should it warrant a disqualification? Possibly. Well, I don't want to say anything that makes me sound very foolish. You see, there's the issue of there's the matter of what happened to Aljamain Sterling because of PCN, who kneed him illegally in the head, but he did suffer like a mild, brief concussion while he was in the octagon there. When it comes to the eyes, I mean, the potential of suffering anything permanent from what happened to Aljamain Sterling, I think there's a lesser risk there than what happened to Belal Muhammad, because in that case, I mean, the actual organ itself, which is a very sensitive organ, actually, received direct injury from his opponent. So, should it warrant disqualification? Should it? Should it really? I'd say yes. Some other people say no. I mean, in this sport, if the promotion, if they do like you a lot, so I mean, let's say for someone like Conor McGregor, who performs an eye poke, I mean, he's always a good example, because he's like Dana White's golden boy. Imagine someone like Conor McGregor was to do something like this, an eye poke by mistake, an accidental eye poke. Would he really be disqualified by the UFC? I don't think so. No, because the amount of money, amount of pay-per-views that he brings into the organization, just the amount of attention, the amount of money he brings into the company, I don't think Dana White's gonna really let anything like that happen to Conor McGregor. So I'm kind of like on the fence with that one. And another thing I should point out is that Belal also took the fight on at short notice, very short notice, just 3 weeks, because Leon Edwards' other opponent, Hamza Chimaev, kept on, I think, having to pull out on more than 2 occasions because of the coronavirus. And even now, he's still, although it's not been reported, his condition hasn't been talked about anywhere in the news, as far as I can see. I'm assuming that he's still recovering from the symptoms that they're saying that he was still displaying, and of course the medication that they're giving him. From what Dana White said about the whole issue last time he spoke about it, he was on a very strong steroid that would help him, but they'll basically help with the treatment, with the overall treatment that he was undergoing. And the poor guy also issued a statement on his Twitter. "My heart is shattered. My first main event ended like that, but God's the best of planners. I'm sorry to the fans, and the UFC deserve the full fight. Alhamdulillah, the vision is coming back, and no permanent damage to the eye. I'll be back and want to run it back." So good, his vision is coming back, and he's on the mend. Overall, he's on the mend, and also he wants to have a rematch. But Leon Edwards had to come out saying that he's not really he wants to skip the rematch and probably just fight someone who potentially will give him the opportunity to earn a UFC title. God, this mic is not close enough to me. So basically, he wants to fight someone who will give him the opportunity to earn a UFC title. So yeah, he's not interested in fighting, having a rematch with Belal Muhammad, because he's, as far as he was concerned in that fight, he says he was clearly winning that fight. And when I look at it, I'll say, I'm so self-conscious of what people will say about me when I give my opinion on something. I'll say yes, it looks that way, but with in this competition, this sport of mixed martial arts, anything your opponent does whilst you're still fighting can just change everything. Just turn the tables on you. So I'm assuming, yeah, it did look that way. But I mean, most people in the community, about 90% of the big names, even someone like Darren Till posted something that was very sympathetic for Belal Muhammad. Most people are more concerned about that guy's health. I mean, they know he took the fight on short notice, and they know that hasn't fought in a while, hasn't competed in a while, and of course he worked hard and trained hard to fight Leon Edwards. So most people are more concerned about his health than they are about what's going to happen to Leon Edwards. Okay, so, and another thing I should point out, that I did say that I promised myself I'd never mention that name in any of my podcasts, and I think for the past 4 weeks or so, nearly 5 weeks now, I've not mentioned that name, and nobody else has mentioned that name, so I'm not going to mention that name either. No, I think I've not said that the words, his name has not rolled off my tongue, hasn't left my mouth in my last 4 or 5, 6 podcasts. So yeah, I think I'll continue that streak. Yeah. So moving on to more important news, much more news that people take seriously. So after UFC 259, Megan Anderson, she did lose to Amanda Nunes. Megan Anderson's contract with the UFC has expired, and it's run its course. So she did reveal in an interview, and it didn't say. I can't remember who it was with. Either she revealed it in an interview, or she probably posted on her Twitter or her Instagram. But she did say that her contract's now expired, and the UFC are planning to actually scrap the women's featherweight division. But the UFC actually released a statement, they released a statement kind of responding to what she said, and basically I think, knowing what the UFC are like and how they treat their fighters, this organization, as to all the other organizations, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, the UFC are notorious how they treat their fighters, and how they will say one thing but do something else, and then say something else. They'll basically do what they like, and that's one of the downsides about being part of this particular organization. Especially as a fighter, because they don't pay you really as much as the other organizations, Bellator, One Championship, PFL. So I think they compensate you by making you into a star and just making you famous in terms of mixed martial arts anyway. So they released a statement regarding the reports out there about the UFC cutting its women's featherweight division. UFC officials say it's not true, and that UFC President Dana White said on Saturday about the future of the division still stands. So he says, so they say, but let's just wait and see what happens. Because again, this organization, from what I can see, even as a novice from the outside, these fighters, I don't think they would lie, because if they were saying something that was completely untrue, the organization could turn around and sue them. So because it's not just from a mixed martial, it's not just from an MMA athlete, such as Megan Anderson, that I've been hearing certain things about the UFC. Other fighters who are now retired, they've also been saying the same thing. They've even taken the UFC to court over certain things which they felt violated their rights, and just things that they just weren't happy with. So I've got a good feeling that this lady's not lying, and I've got a good feeling that those other fighters aren't lying either. But again, let's wait and see what happens. I say that she, I have a good feeling. I say that she has a good. Fucking hell! I say that I have a good feeling that she, more than likely, isn't lying. But I'm not contradicting myself. Let's wait and see what happens if this weight division for the women for the female fighters in the UFC, if it's still going to be standing in the next month or the next year. Let's see. Wait and see what happens. So guys, that is it for another show, for another episode. I really got to stop this bad habit of saying hate it. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe if you like my content. There's a lot of things for this podcast I'm working on: the intro music, the animation, the logo. Still trying to get my podcast onto Apple Podcasts. I'm saying that now for the upteenth time. I'm sure many people are just sick and tired of hearing it. I'm sick and tired of saying it, but it's something which I'm going to sort out. I have to sort it out. And I'm sure it's something so simple and so easy to do, but for some reason there's so much encryption for me to get around. But if it means me having to ask for outside help to do it, then that's what I'll do. But one way or the other, I'm going to get my podcast onto the Apple Podcast directory. It's definitely going to happen. So guys, you can also follow me on Instagram, Ojiako1, and on Twitter my name's Ojiako. On Facebook my name's Ojiako as well. You can listen to these podcasts on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud, and soon Apple Podcasts. And I'm not sure. No, I think I've covered everything. So yes, thank you, and thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.